Emily of Deep Valley by Maud Hart Lovelace. Read to you by Mrs. McDonald.
The recording of this audiobook was inspired by and is dedicated to Maureen. Chapter 1. The Last Day of High School. It's the last day of high school ever, Annette said. She said it gaily, swinging Emily's hand and pulling her about so that they faced the red brick building with its tall arched windows and doors, its elaborate limestone trimming, its bulging turrets, and the cupola that made an ironical dunce's cap on top of all. Annette threw a kiss at it, then lifted her right hand and opened and shut the fingers in a playful wave. "Goodbye, old jail," she said. "Don't you dare call the Deep Valley High School a jail." Emily's tone was joking, but there was a warmth in it, too. "Besides, we'll be coming back for class day." "It won't be the same." Annette tilted her little dark head, on which a complicated structure of puffs and curls was protected by a net and held in place by a ribbon. She smiled up engagingly. "You're sorry, aren't you, Em?" "Yes, I am." "I'm not, a bit. That's funny, isn't it? When I've had so much more, that is, when I've had so much more fun here." Emily knew what she had started to say. "When I've had so much more fun here than you have." It was true that Annette had been a belle, and Emily certainly hadn't. But she loved the high school more than Annette possibly could. "I've been happy here," she said. It had been a refuge for her. Staring up at the cupola roof, outlined against the blue May sky, she thought affectionately of the hubbub in the social room at noon intermission, so different from the brooding silence of her home. She thought of the fun she had had with the girls, of the companionship she had known in classrooms, of the joyful challenge she had found in debating on the assembly room platform. Emily was on the star debating team, which had won the Southern Minnesota Championship for 2 years running. And there had been parties, too, like last night's junior-senior banquet. "Wasn't the banquet wonderful?" she asked as she and Annette started down Walnut Street. The high school stood on the corner of Walnut and High. Walnut descended a steep hill, following terraced lawns. There were snowy drifts of bridal wreath around almost all the houses, and birds were as busy as seniors, full of talk and song. "Marvelous," answered Annette. "Of course." She laughed contentedly. "I had my hands full. Did you notice how sulky Jim Baxter was because I came with Dawn?" "I certainly did." "Did you really have fun?" Annette looked pleased but puzzled, and Emily knew that she couldn't understand why the junior-senior banquet had seemed wonderful to Emily when she hadn't even come with a boy. But it had. The familiar battered halls transformed by bunting, flags, and balloons. The dinner, formally served by excited junior girls. The speeches by Miss Bangeter, the principal, and by the junior and senior class presidents. Hunter Sibley of the class of 1912 had done a wonderful job. And the dancing, that had been best of all. Emily didn't go to many high school dances. It wasn't customary to go unless a boy invited you, but even unattached girls came to the junior-senior banquet, and it had been thrilling to hear the music of piano and violin and to join the maze of rhythmically moving figures. She had danced a number of times with Hunter and other class officers. She was treasurer of the class. Moreover, Don Walker had danced with her. He had done it, probably, because he had come with Annette, who was Emily's second cousin. But it had seemed a breathless boon to Emily that she should dance with Don before high school was over, closed like the covers of a book that could never be read again, no matter how much one might wish to do so. They were on the debating team together, and she had a special feeling for him. Tall and rangy in ankle-length skirts, her curly hair woven into a braid which was turned up with a ribbon, Emily walked smilingly beside her pretty cousin. Annette was so small that she often made Emily feel hulking, and Annette was so pretty, with her sparkling eyes and staccato bird-like movements, that she always made Emily feel plain. Emily wasn't plain, exactly, but her face was serious. She was shy and quiet, although her blue eyes, set in a thicket of lashes under heavy brows, often glinted with fun. Both boys and girls liked her. "Emily isn't a lemon," she had once overheard Annette say heatedly. Annette and Gladys Dunn had been planning some boy and girl party in the cloakroom, and Emily had stumbled in. She had escaped without being seen, but she had never forgotten Annette's blunt defense of her. It was true, she decided later. She wasn't what the high school called a lemon, but she had never learned to joke and flirt with boys. Or perhaps boys just didn't joke and flirt with a girl who lived with her grandfather in a funny old house across the slough. Walnut crossed Broad Street and Second and went on to Front, the business thoroughfare, which paralleled the river. The girls were nearing Front when they heard a clatter behind them and the sound of shoe leather sliding along the cement walk. "Hi there! Wait!" They turned to see handsome Hunter Sibley and Ellen, his girl, hand in hand, along with Fred Mueller and Skid Edwards and Dawn. At the sight of Dawn's tall, erect figure, Emily felt the small tumult which he always created in her heart. "How about stopping at Heinz's?" called Skid. "Celebrate the last day of school." Annette smiled at Dawn. "But Em and I have to try on our graduating dresses. And Hunter has to practice his oration in the opera house," put in Ellen, sounding proud. "Me too," said Don. "I'm a bright boy too." He had a deep, resonant voice. "How about you, Em?" asked Hunter. "I'm practicing mine tomorrow." "You honor roll people," jibed Skid. "You walking encyclopedias. You grinds." Hunter grinned. "Dawn and I could meet you at Heinz's afterward," he said. "Even intellectual giants like us eat ice cream. Don't they, Emily?" Emily laughed, but she didn't know how to respond. It always irritated her, this slowness in repartee, for on the debating platform her tongue was as quick as a bird. "I've an idea," cried Annette. "Why don't you all come to our house? Em and I have to be there anyway. I know," she added radiantly. "I'll give a party. Miss Annette Webster cordially invites you to a last day of school party." "We'll bring ice cream from Heinz's," Skid yelled. He was a short, merry boy called Skid because he had said in class one day that Columbus skidovered America. "Also Nabisco wafers. We'll play the phonograph and dance." And Skid began to dance on the corner of Walnut and Front, circling an imaginary partner. Don laughed, as he always did, at other people's antics. Always, that is, when he was in a good mood. "We'll expect you then," cried Annette. "But don't come until Em and I are through with our fittings. Mamma will be nervous as a witch." The crowd broke up, and the cousins hurried south along busy Front Street, past the Melbourne Hotel and the Lion Department Store. Emily felt both pleased and uncomfortable. Every festivity that could be crowded into these last days was a gain, but she well knew she was included in this one only by chance, because she happened to be going home with Annette. The cousins were excellent friends. They enjoyed each other when family reunions or Annette's mother's assistance to Emily brought them together. But Emily belonged only to the girl part of the crowd. She was seldom included when boys entered in, and even with the girls she was a little apart. Where Front Street curved to meet the slough, it became briefly residential. There were several blocks of handsome houses standing in large lawns, and Annette lived in one of these, a yellow painted brick with a bay window, rimmed with colored glass in front. "Mamma will be furious," giggled Annette as they approached. "Aunt Sophie is never furious at you long," said Emily. She called Annette's parents aunt and uncle by courtesy. Actually, Annette's father was her own dead father's cousin. "But she's in such a state," answered Annette. "Grandpa and Grandma Ledoux are coming for my graduation, and Aunt Lois, and Uncle Edward, and a flock of cousins. And of course Miss Mix is there, and presents are just pouring in, and Mamma's a very nervous type." "She's wonderful to you." "I know it, but she has to be handled. Now this crowd coming in won't be a bit of trouble, since the boys are bringing the ice cream. But I'm glad you'll be with me, Em, when I break the news." "Lean on me," said Emily. "I have broad shoulders." It was obvious at once that Aunt Sophie was indeed in a state. She leaned over the stairs, her black hair wispy about an anxious face. "What's been keeping you?" she called. "Miss Mix can't do another thing until she tries these on." "Don't tell her yet," whispered Annette, as they ran up the wide, carpeted stairs. There was a fern in a brass bowl on the newel post, and an Indian head on the wall. Emily loved these bright modern touches. She looked down with pleasure into the parlor with its mission oak furniture, its smart stenciled over drapes, and dusky blue Maxfield Parrish picture over the mantel. A rim of polished floor surrounded the rug, for Aunt Sophie had long since abolished carpets. Aunt Sophie hurried them into the front bedroom, where Miss Mix sat at a sewing machine. Miss Mix sewed for all the best families of Deep Valley. She came to their houses, and one of Aunt Sophie's kind gestures to Emily had been offering to let Miss Mix make her dresses there while she was making Annette's. It was inconceivable to think of Miss Mix in the little old-fashioned house across the slough. Emily liked good clothes, and she dressed well. She spent almost as much money on her clothes as Annette did. In fact, Aunt Sophie was always saying that she wished Annette could spend as freely as Emily spent. Uncle Chester, she said, acted so when the bills came in. Emily's grandfather never told her to spend much or little. She liked simple clothes, of good materials, well made. She liked sailor suits and dark pleated skirts with plenty of soft white waists. They were a contrast to Annette's frills, but they suited her. Her graduation dress was made of a fine white lawn trimmed only with tucks. Emily looked in the tear glass with pleasure, while Miss Mix, her mouth full of pins, squinted critically at the hem. Aunt Sophie approved it absently. "It's awfully plain, Emily, but you wanted it that way." "Yes, I did." Miss Mix took the pins out of her mouth. "It's nice," she said. This was astonishing, for Miss Mix seldom spoke. "Yes, it really is," Aunt Sophie answered, but her eyes were on Annette's ruffled organdy laid out on the bed. It had tiny white rosebuds along the top of the ruffles, and Aunt Sophie was longing to see the effect. Annette was an only child, and Aunt Sophie and Uncle Chester really worshipped her, thought Emily. Uncle Chester might complain about the bills, but he loved to shower his daughter with everything extravagant and lovely. When Annette was in the room, they seldom looked at anyone else. They seemed to put everything pertaining to Annette in a special category of supreme importance. The only dress in the room now, so far as Aunt Sophie was concerned, was Annette's dress. But Emily observed this with interest rather than resentment. Perhaps, she reflected, all mothers were that way. She knew remarkably little about mothers. Her own had died when she was born. Emily finished her fitting, and Annette's began. The rosebuds were approved. "That's fine, Annette. That's all we'll want. So now you can—" But Annette forestalled the instructions, whatever they might be, by plunging boldly with the news that a crowd was bringing ice cream from Heinz's. "Annette," her mother wailed, "when you know how busy we are, Grandpa and Grandma will be coming any minute." "We'll clean up, won't we?" Annette prodded Emily. "We'll put all the chairs back." "The chairs back? You're going to dance?" "Of course, but only on the porch. And afterwards we'll make things as neat as a pin, Aunt Sophie," Emily put in. "But there are so many presents to open. There were 3 boxes this morning, and 2 this afternoon." Aunt Sophie was relenting, though. She never could stand out against Annette long. "We'll open them just as soon as the kids go," said Annette, and pulled Emily into her bedroom. Here sunshine poured through white ruffled curtains held back by pink rosettes. There were more white curtains and pink rosettes on the bird's-eye maple furniture, a spread of the same pink and white on the big brass bed. The walls showed high school and college pennants, Harrison Fisher girls, and a fishnet full of photographs. Annette powdered her nose and adjusted the pins in her elaborate coiffure. Emily retied her hair ribbon and washed her hands. There was time for no more, for the doorbell was ringing. The girls ran downstairs, and the crowd burst in with cartons of ice cream, boxes of cookies, and bottles of cherry phosphate. "How did the orations go?" "Fine, fine," said Dawn. "Cicero has nothing on me." "Hunter was wonderful," cried Ellen. "How do the dresses look?" "Beautiful. Mine has little white rosebuds on it." "If it's as pretty as your class day dress—" "Annette," called her mother, who was dishing out ice cream, "that reminds me, there's a photographer coming tomorrow to take your pictures." "Didn't you have your pictures taken when the rest of us did?" asked Fred. "Yes, in shirtwaist and skirt, but Papa and Mama want me in the class day dress and the graduation dress. They never seem to have enough pictures of me. They're silly about me." Skid kicked Don, who gave an appreciative chuckle. "They're not the only ones." "And of course," said Ellen, "next year you'll be away at college." "Of course. All of us will be." "All of them but me," thought Emily, and a quick pain seemed to drop down her body like a skyrocket in reverse. But Skid was cranking the phonograph, and music came to her rescue, pouring from the Morning Glory horn. They had carried their ice cream through the rich dark dining room to the sunny side porch. The crowd pushed back the rattan chairs and rolled up the green grass rug. Aunt Sophie, forgetting her early annoyance, looked on eagerly. The boys found partners and started dancing. Dawn took Annette, of course. Emily danced with Fred Mueller, a tall, slender, light-haired boy who was an exceptional dancer. He and his sister Tib danced together at entertainments sometimes. Emily stumblingly followed his lead. She wasn't a good dancer, but it was such fun. She felt sure that she could be good if she only had a chance to learn. The phonograph was playing a popular waltz. "Meet me tonight in dreamland, under the silvery moon." Everyone but Emily was singing. Emily didn't know the words, but she was happy as Fred piloted her gallantly up and down the porch. Not only her eyes, but even her serious mouth was smiling. If there had to be a last day of high school, she thought, it was wonderful to have it just like this.